it's snowing again, which is a good reason for staying in. So yeah, we could do that. Let's stay in and talk about some portraits that I took with the Canon 32mm f1.4 and the Canon M50. I will also share a little more about my thought process when taking portraits, the settings that I used, and before and afters. And as for editing, I will link a blog post in the description so you can know more about that. So let's begin. Kat and I have worked a few times before, but I haven't been taking as much portraits as I used to. So, you know, I'm a little rusty, I would say. And it took me a while to get back on my stride, but we still managed to get a few decent, pleasing photos. Okay, let's proceed. So we kept it simple with one location, which is a hallway in my apartment building with a big window and one outfit. It's just sweater, skirt, and boots. That was it. The first photo is the only one that I planned prior to the shoot, and then the rest is I just went along with what came up and what I thought of during the shoot. So it's simple, facing out of frame. And as for the settings, I had the aperture at f1.4 because why not? This is my first 1.4 lens that I own. So I wanted to see what it can really do. And then as for the ISO, since the M50 is a crop sensor camera, I always try to keep my ISO as low as possible. And then for this particular shot, I have my shutter speed at 1/320th of a second, which is an oversight actually. I could have gone down to maybe 1/250 and the shot would have worked better. But again, oversight. And for the rest of the photos, the aperture and ISO would pretty much stay the same or just move a little. And then the shutter speed is really the one that I was changing throughout. The next photo is just a variation of the first one. It's the thinking pose, but the framing is almost the same. So these poses are rather easy to do and simple and can be your go-to for any portrait or whenever you're just in that phase where you're still testing out the settings and all that. We then moved to the left-hand side of that window and then tried some more standing poses, but instead of half body wands, we kind of did 3/4 body. Is that what you call it? One thing you'll notice is that I raised my ISO to 200 to compensate for the sunlight that goes by fast during the winter months in Chicago. And then as for the framing, I could have framed this at eye level, could have taken this at eye level, but then at this lower angle, I think it's more interesting. Next photo, when shooting with a rather wide angle lens, like the 32mm, you gotta pay attention to barrel distortion, especially when you're close to your subject or to a brick wall, because that's when it's really apparent. But that's an easy fix in Lightroom, so there's nothing to worry about there. I think the shallow depth of field that you get with the 32mm is good enough to separate your subject from the background in small spaces like this. However, it still won't match an 85 or maybe a 50mm lens. One more thing that I would like to point out with a 32mm lens is that you kind of have to think about your background more, since it's a wider field of view compared to more conventional portrait lenses like the 50mm or 85 that really crops into your subject. I find this to actually be a good thing, for me at least, because it gets me to think more, whereas with an 85 I can just point it at the subject and then really not care about the background as much, because I know the 85 at 1.8 or even at 2.8 will blur that background out. As a conclusion for this video, I would say the 32mm lens has a good aperture value that gives you a lot of creative control over your photos. It's sharp and has good enough colors. Not the best that I would like, but they're good enough. However, it's not for everyone, especially if you want those more conventional type of head and shoulder portraits. But if you're into those lifestyle, everyday environment type of portraits like what Andrew Kearns does or Sam Elkins does, then I think you should check this lens out if you're in the M system. If you made it to this part of the video, thank you so much for putting up with me. Now I'll bring your attention to this lens. And this is not the 32mm 1.4, but it's also another 1.4 lens. And it's actually the Canon 50mm f1.4 for the FD mount that I adapted for the M50 with this adapter with a tripod mount. And I used this together with a magnifying glass to take some portraits during the shoot. And here are the photos. If you have any questions regarding the 32mm lens or even the 51.4 FD mount lens, feel free to leave a comment down below. And thanks for watching, and see you on the next one.